Next up is The Big Bang Theory, Season 2, Episode 6, The Cooper-Nowitzki Theorem. The episode gets this title because Sheldon has some help and then some trouble from a grad student named Ramona Nowitzki. This episode starts off with Leonard giving a presentation to some grad students. When he's done, after he had some trouble with the laser, he tells Sheldon it's his turn to come out, and Sheldon basically insults them and tells them that none of them are going to be smart enough to actually make any real contribution to physics. The next day, while they're having lunch in the cafeteria, we get an appearance of Leslie Winkle, of course, taking the opportunity to insult Sheldon. We then get a grad student approach Sheldon, Ramona Nowitzki. She is a fan of Sheldon. She's very impressed with all of his work and said she's read all of his papers, and she'd like to talk to him about his work. Sheldon at first doesn't want to because she wants to go for coffee, and he doesn't drink coffee. And then we find out that Sheldon won't go to a strange restaurant because he lives in fear of the three-pronged fork. That's basically a trident, and is for ruling the sea and not for eating dinner. Eventually, they come to the agreement that she'll buy Sheldon's Thai food and come to talk to him at his apartment. They all ask Sheldon if he knows what just happened, and he said yes, he's getting free Thai food. Ramona arrives at the building with the Thai food, and she's walking up the stairs with Penny, and Penny seems very shocked that she's there to see Sheldon, probably because Penny's never seen Sheldon with any girls before. Which isn't entirely true. He did steal Raj's date in a previous episode, but as we've discussed, Sheldon didn't view that as a date. Ramona is very complimentary of Sheldon and his work, which Sheldon is eating up, and we have a group gathered to watch, which Penny joins. We have Raj, Howard, Leonard, and Penny all sitting and watching the date, until Ramona very strongly hints that she thought that they would be alone, and Leonard ushers everybody out into the hallway. At this point, Penny wants to know what Sheldon's deal is. She basically wants to know if he's into girls, if he's into guys, what's he into, and they all say that they've been under the assumption that he's not really into anything. Penny says that everybody's into something, and they said that they have their own theories of how Sheldon would reproduce, both of which are equally terrifying. Howard's theory is that Sheldon will eat a large amount of Thai food, and then eventually through mitosis split from one Sheldon into two separate Sheldons. Leonard's theory is that Sheldon is in the larval stage of his species, and he will someday form a cocoon and emerge later with moth-like wings and an exoskeleton. The next morning at the university, Leonard asks Sheldon how it went, and he says that Ramona was very knowledgeable and insightful, and he enjoyed his time with her. And then she comes over bringing Sheldon his breakfast. She also fights a battle for him with Leslie Winkle, getting her to go away, basically by saying she can't stay, she's not going to be quiet, so Leslie just walks away. She then looks at Leonard, and he too chooses to leave the table. We now go back to the apartment, and Penny is going to drop off a package, and she sees a very disturbing sight, which is Sheldon doing work while Ramona is giving him a pedicure. Out in the hallway, she tells Leonard not to go in, and the only way she could describe what she saw would be in a therapist's office with dolls. Leonard goes in, and he's pretty shocked by the sight as well, and tells Sheldon that it's Halo night at Cooper Polly's house, so they're going to go. But as Sheldon prepares to leave, Ramona tells him that he's too brilliant and he needs to work, and he doesn't have time for Halo night. He objects, but then he eventually agrees because she uses his own logic against him. Quoting himself to him, Sheldon then figures out that he can't argue with his own knowledge, so he agrees to stay and do his work. When Leonard leaves, Ramona tells Sheldon that she thinks his friends are distractions, and then we begin a montage of her trying to block out those distractions. Every time Sheldon's trying to have fun, Ramona's there to block him and get him back on track working. We see her stopping him from going to play paintball, reading comic books, and playing video games, all the things that Sheldon enjoys. Sheldon is then starting to become desperate for help, so he goes to ask Penny for help with getting rid of Ramona. She must have a lot of experience because he sees a lot of men leave the apartment never to return again. Ramona catches him while doing this and tells Penny that she knows that she likes Sheldon, but she can't be in a relationship. They can't hog his brilliance. Penny's a little shocked by this because of course she is, but basically goes along with it to get Ramona to go away. Night, we find out that Ramona's sleeping out on the couch, and Sheldon begins trying to communicate with Leonard through the wall with Morse code, and then comes into his room to, again, try to get his help with getting rid of Ramona. Very interesting part here is that we get the first appearance of what would become the roommate agreement. Sheldon references the friendship agreement. He goes over some clauses he wants to use that would get Leonard to help him get rid of Ramona, although Leonard says those clauses aren't applicable to the current situation. I believe this is the first reference to the agreement. It's called the friendship agreement here, not the roommate agreement. Later, there is a friendship clause in the roommate agreement that we'll see. And the roommate agreement becomes a very important part of the show, so it's good to note its origin at this point. Nowitzki eventually comes in and tells Sheldon he needs to go back to bed so he can be at prime focus. And then we see Sheldon Nowitzki celebrating. It seems like her urging him to work hard has paid off, and he has solved the problem he's been trying to solve for his work. He's very happy with her for her help, and he wants to know how he can repay her, and she says she wants him to name his discovery the Sheldon-Nowitzki theorem. He asks who's Nowitzki, and she says that's her, and Sheldon then realizes she wants him to share credit, and then he immediately tells her to leave. He kicks her out. He is done with her at this point. Because to Sheldon, she may have been helpful, but she was a tool. All the brilliance came from him, and he's not going to share his credit with anybody. And then the cycle seems to start all over again as the next day in the cafeteria, another grad student comes up to talk to Sheldon, saying she likes his work, and this time she's going to bring him a pizza to talk to him. They ask Sheldon if he knows what happened, and he says again, yes, he's getting a free pizza, not even aware that the cycle might be starting over again. And we get a very funny closing scene where Sheldon is eating Thai food, and just as Howard theorized, after eating enough, he gets very full and then splits into two Sheldons. Luckily for the world, this was just a nightmare on Leonard's part, and he wakes up and says no more Thai food for him. This is another good episode, mostly interesting on Sheldon's part. We see a lot with Sheldon in this episode. We see that he starts to interact with a woman, but it's very clear from the beginning that Sheldon is not interested in her in any romantic sort of way. He is just letting her help him professionally. The rest of the group's not very familiar with Sheldon interacting with women, so they're not even sure what's really going on here. It's not even fully clear what Ramona's intentions are. She seems interested in Sheldon, but we're not sure if it's romantic or professional on her part as well. Is she just so impressed with his work and wants to use it as a way to promote her own career as well? We see her tell Penny that they can't hog Sheldon from the world, so maybe she doesn't see him as a potential romantic partner for herself, but as a work partner. And Sheldon at first is open to having Ramona around. He's even complimentary of her, which he's not of most people. And when she's starting to over-insert herself and block him from doing the things he likes so he keeps working, he's not quite sure how to deal with it. He wants to get rid of her, but he doesn't quite know how, and he feels nervous about the whole thing. But when she asks to share credit, Sheldon's true nature comes out. He will not do this, because while she did help, he feels like the work that was done was his. And it's not that Sheldon's never willing to share work. We know that Sheldon has co-published work with Leonard before. So when there is work done on both sides, we see that Sheldon is willing to publish papers with other people and share credit. Nowitzki was close, but she flew too close to the sun with her wings made of wax. For Sheldon, this is still very early in the Sheldon character, and he has a lot of growth yet to come. But at this point, a relationship just doesn't seem like it would be in the cards for Sheldon. This is a very solid episode, and I would score it at an 8 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for the next video coming soon.